The support role in any game can be very complicated, and it is one of the most important roles in any game that has. And I've been seeing a lot of talk about Ultron and Marvel Rivals, which inspired me to make this video because a lot of people were debating on whether or not Ultron will have a lot of use. Now, with any character that's new to Marvel Rivals, how useful they'll be like right off the bat is really determined like later in the cycle of the game, because Ultron just came out, so we probably won't know how useful he is until like, maybe like a month or two of him being in the game to see whether or not he'll be meta or whether or not he'll actually, even be viable, especially for comp and tournaments. But I do think Ultron will be very useful. It's just that in Marvel Rivals specifically, people are not used to the off healer / main DPS that Ultron is, because most but not all of these supports in Marvel Rivals have kind of a similar playstyle where they do a lot of healing, they do okay damage, and their ult is just big circle with healing. And Ultron is the first support that we've gotten in the game to where that's not the case, to where he's not just I'm gonna heal bot you the entire game and then my ult is just I do a big amount of healing or give you a lot of shield in a circle. But I kind of want to talk about how Ultron will be used and how useful he can be in a lot of situations, and kind of just expand on the support and just kind of expand on the support role in games in general.
Now a word from our sponsors.
Hi, before using W, I was a father of 12, but now after W, I'm a deadbeat dad.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Let's see what we got in here for the W. We got the motherfucking. We got the motherfucking. Oh shit. So the first flavor of W, we have peach and beet.
You what?
Second flavor of W, we got the dragon maple. Next flavor we have laxative.
What?
Oh, laxy grenade. Next flavor we have this is a 0 sugar powder pack. And last but certainly not least, we have Pines Berry Splash. I'm Wasabi, and this has been your W advertisement.
But one last thing before we get into that, I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year so that I can afford triple dippers and feed my addictions to it. So I really appreciate it. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, share with somebody. I appreciate it. So with Ultron being a new strategist in Marvel Rivals, a lot of people have been saying that Ultron really isn't a support or a strategist. He's just a DPS with like a little bit of shield and like a little bit of healing. But honestly, I feel like Ultron will have main use in triple support comps because of the fact that he has very low like healing. Like I've played a couple games with him up to this point, and like his healing with like just by himself, like if your other healer dies and it's just Ultron being the one that has to heal the entire team, you're cooked. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have any use at all. I do feel like he'll find his place in the meta very soon. I don't think he'll be like, a top tier support like, Luna Loki setups and things like that. But honestly, I feel like in a setup where you have like a Luna and a Loki, and maybe you need a third healer, or maybe you need just more damage, but you don't want to go into the DPS, obviously, then you can make the swap to Ultron to essentially be the support of the team by him doing damage and applying shields to people. Because when we talk about this role, people mainly talk about it from the lens of just healing stats alone and not what the role is actually supposed to be, which is a support. Because the role is not called healer, it's called support, where you're supposed to support your team by doing damage, applying shields, using any type of CC that you have, like a Lunar Freeze, a Mantis Sleep, or something like that. And I feel like Ultron is like the best step in the right direction for Marvel Rivals as far as like, how they're gonna make supports. Because if Ultron is any indication of like what the future supports in this game will look like, I want them to go down the route of making more supports like Ultron so they can actually feel like support characters and not every support character just be a Luna or a Cloak and Dagger cop. Because if we also look at another hero shooter that has a lot of supports in Overwatch, every single support in that game outside of Mercy is essentially what Ultron is. Or mainly when you look at high level play of them, every high level support player in Overwatch essentially acts as a DPS. Like it's essentially like another DPS on your team. It has a self heal, and when you're literally about to die, like on like 20 HP, that's when they heal you. And that is kind of the really big difference between Marvel Rivals support characters versus Overwatch support characters. Overwatch support characters are essentially act like Ultron, and the best way to play them and to get value out of them is to play like Ultron, which is mainly doing DPS, mainly doing damage, giving a little shields here and there to support your team and to help them getting kills or getting the kills yourself. Because any good support player in Overwatch will tell you that a lot of times you'll see a Kiriko flanking to get damage, and then when the enemy tank or DPS turns around and starts shooting her, she teleports back to her team, or Suzu's herself, teleports back to the team, gives out heals, then goes for another off angle. And essentially every other support in the game functions like that except for Mercy. You have a support like Zenyatta, for example, who is literally a DPS with like a small healing orb. Like that's what I think is like the main comparison that you could draw with Ultron in Marvel Rivals is Zenyatta. Like obviously outside the flying part, Zenyatta and Ultron are basically the same character. They have a little healing orb and their main purpose is to do supplementary damage. They're not there to do a lot of healing. Now thankfully, Ultron doesn't have a fucking Discord orb, which would, make every tech in this game probably shed a fucking tear or two, but they both act in similar ways to where their main job is to apply supplementary damage and not big healing numbers. Ultron doesn't need to get picked in a team comp to where you need big healing numbers. Ultron is picked to where when you need a third healer, you say, okay, let's just go Ultron so that I can give a little more healing and a lot more damage at the same time. Because I would love for Marvel Rivals to keep going in this direction with not all, but most of the healers in this game, because we already have enough of really heal body characters. Invisible Woman, Rocket, Luna, Cloak and Dagger. Like we already have a lot of heal body type of supports. I really want us to lean forward into more supports like a Ultron, like a Mantis, like an Adam Warlock, to where they have, more of a limited healing pool, but they're also still a support with a little bit of healing, to where their main job is similar to Ultron in supplementary damage and even more CC. I would love to have a support character to where a lot of their kit is, CC or stuns or something like that. Because in a way, and to kind of transition to what I want to talk about, Ultron kind of reminds me of MOBA supports. And I'm going to use the only MOBA that I play, which is Predecessor. I don't play League or anything like that. So yeah, Ultron reminds me of MOBA support characters. And if you've played any MOBA, a lot of the times in MOBA, supports either only have one healing ability, or in Predecessor, as the main example, a lot of the supports in Predecessor do not have healing at all. Their main job is to support the team through, different and various forms of CC and stuns and, blocking damage, and essentially doing the opposite of what they do in Rivals, which is die first. And also in MOBAs, you will even have, a tanky support or a tank support, whose main job is to soak up damage and to essentially, or body block damage, or essentially to soak up damage as a support player so that the carry or the mid lane or the off lane doesn't die first, and now you don't have enough damage to win the team fight. Now for this example, I'm going to use Richter and Steel for the tank example. Richter and Steel are essentially what I say when I mean a tank support. They're just there for CC and to stun and to act as the front line as the support character. Now this is only really seen in MOBAs. I've never really seen this in like hero shooters where like you have a tanky type of support. Supports are normally, known for being really squishy and known for being able to not soak up a lot of damage. But with these two characters, that's just the name of the game. So focus on Richter a little bit more. He's more of what I like to call a disruptor, because Richter's abilities mainly focus on disrupting other people's abilities so that you can allow your carry to do more damage and to get a lot more kills. Now Richter's main and his best ability in his kit is his hook. Now his hook is really good because failure. But if you actually can hit the hook, it's a really good useful tool. But jokes aside, this is Richter's main and primary ability that you're going to want to use while he is in, dual lane, off lane, jungle, like whichever lane you decide to use him in, or whichever role. Richter's hook is his best disruption tool, and it makes it so that him blocking damage once you hook in the carrier, hook in anyone for a matter of fact, it lets you do great poke damage, or if you're able to scale enough, or if you're able to scale enough and not feed your fucking brains out, you're able to instantly hook them in and they're basically dead like a second later. And one of the great things about his stun is that it stuns directly on impact. So once the hook goes out and it hits any target within like whatever like range it has, it immediately stuns, so no movement abilities can be done. And another reason that Richter is a great disruptor is his next ability, which is his shock therapy whip. which looks like a basic attack, but once you cast it, it silences whoever you hit with it. They're not able to use any abilities. And I believe that the only thing they're able to do while they're silenced is flash away, which is essentially like a teleport which is essentially a teleport that you can use to get away from somebody killing. And that and those two abilities in combination with his ultimate ability, which is the skewer, which is his kind of like ultimate stun ability to where you cannot move at all, no abilities can be activated, and you're stunned for I believe about a second, maybe a second and a half, which you can do those in like any order. A lot of the times the order will be hook, ultimate, and then shock therapy, where you're essentially stunned and not being able to move for about 2 seconds. I think that's how long you last, and all the while you're soaking up damage from the support and being able to, you know, disrupt the entire, you know, flow of the dual lane while you're a tanky support. And still does kind of act as like a very similar way of, you know, a lot of stun and a lot of CC, but I would equate Steel to more of a tanky support, but think of him more in a way as kind of like the Thing. While unlike the Thing, he's not CC immune, which would be great, but he's not CC immune, but he's more of a close combat CC stun type of character. Because Richter and Steel are both melee characters, Richter does have the advantage over Steel of being able to use his hook from a distance and being able to use his ultimate from a pretty good distance, while Steel more or less requires you to have greater positioning to be able to use his dash in order to hit a stun, and then he has another close combat stun, and then his ult is essentially Steel's whole thing is stuns and not necessarily like, you know, disruption. Steel's entire game plan is to position well to get in close and use about 3 or 4 stuns to be able to disrupt the enemy dual lane or just disrupt team fights in general. Now, a tanky support would be a great thing to have in Marvel Rivals. Honestly, I feel like that would be like a great change of, you know, pace in the hero shooter, because from what I know about hero shooters, there haven't been any tanky supports or any, you know, tank-like supports. Tank is, you know, kind of considered his own role, and if you're gonna be a tanky type of character, I mean, you're either going to be a regular tank or a kind of off tank DPS, kind of like how Mr. Fantastic is. And MOBAs do have, you know, squishier type of support similar to hero shooters. And funny enough, a good chunk, if not all of the predecessor supports are very, very squishy. You have, you know, Zinx, Decker, Argus, FaZe, and they are kind of more the traditional squishy supports, but only Zinx and FaZe have healing abilities. The rest of them, while still being a squishy support, mainly rely on CC and crowd control and disruption to help out in the dual lane, to help their carry do damage and to get kills. But a support that doesn't heal in a hero shooter hasn't been touched in almost a decade. The last time that we saw a support that doesn't heal was long ago in the ancient year of 2016 with Symmetra. And for the people who don't know or who didn't, you know, play Overwatch 1, Symmetra originally in Overwatch 1 was a support that didn't heal. Symmetra doesn't have any healing abilities. And from what I know, her abilities were pretty much the same. She was just labeled, you know, a support character and mainly there for, you know, disruption and essentially to do damage and basically nothing else. But I'm not sure if this would be something that you could put in a modern hero shooter, because especially with how modern hero shooters are played, especially in like lower ranks, a support that doesn't heal might as well just be a DPS. Because while yes, you could have a support that is just there for damage and disruption, having it be a squishy support wouldn't really do well if they get two-shotted by everything else. But it would be an interesting thing if they were a tank support. If you had a, you know, support like a Richter or a Steel in Marvel Rivals, to where they have a bunch of health, and while they might not be able to heal you, they're able to block damage or even like body block or ult or something like that, and use their disruption and CC to essentially support the team. And I feel like that would be a very, very interesting road that Marvel Rivals could potentially go down, especially with this game being based off of superheroes. Every single support isn't going to be a, you know, smaller, squishier hero. We could get a, you know, tank-like support. I don't know. I'm not that well versed in superheroes, so any comic book heads in the comments, you know, let me know if there are any, you know, like tankier heroes or villains that could be a tank support that could use a lot of, you know, CC and stuns to be a strategist or to be a support. But I feel like that would be a really interesting road to go down, because we already have a, you know, we already have our first flying support in Ultron. Why not have a, you know, tanky support? And in general, I would love for NetEase to, you know, look into that, because it would make the support role in the game more interesting and have a lot more variety than it does now. Because outside of, you know, Ultron, Outside of, you know, Ultron, Adam Warlock, and Mantis, the support role is kind of the same. I have fun playing it because I just like playing support. I'm a support player in mostly every game that I play that has a support role, but I just really think that it would expand I really think that having, you know, a tanky support or having more, you know, flying supports will really add a lot more variety to the support role of Marvel Rivals. And shit, you can even add this to Overwatch. Maybe add a tanky support in Overwatch that has a little bit of healing, but main job is there to block damage and could be, you know, a second tank since there's only, you know, one tank in the main game of Overwatch 2. But all in all, I am excited that Marvel Rivals has taken this approach to Ultron and not just make him a very like heal body type of support character. And I hope that in the future, when we get more supports, they're more like Ultron. Not saying that we don't need, you know, more heroes like Luna or like Invisible Woman and Cloak and Dagger. We still could, you know, getting those type of support characters in Marvel Rivals would still be, you know, good as long as they're fun and they're not, you know, completely boring. Because Invisible Woman and Cloak and Dagger and Luna are great, you know, support characters in the game. We just need more of a variety of the type of supports that we get in the game. And Ultron is just a step in the right direction. So I hope that Marvel Rivals keeps going down this path. If you got this far in the video, I really appreciate it if you leave me a like and a comment, and really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Trying to hit 1,000 subs. Appreciate you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little deep dive of support. If you want me to do the other roles, you know, I can do that as well. Appreciate you for watching. I'm out.
And you lit?